Okay, now with the leads in place, we're going to take off all the clamps and glue the surround landing. Maybe a little crunchy in there, so to avoid tearing the spider off any farther, what you want to do is you just want to squeeze it a little bit and pull downward. That way it won't tear at the spider when you go to pull the clamps off. Because when the glue soaks through the spider, it's going to soak onto the clamp also, so the clamp's going to glue down to it. But because of the material, it should remove fairly easy. Now our spider landing is completely glued down. Leads are in place, and now we are going to glue the surround landing. So what you want to do is lift this assembly up with the shim still in place so that it kind of supports it in an upward fashion. That way the surround landing is off of the basket. And you want to apply a bead of glue at the very inside edge of the landing. You also want to make sure that surround landing does not touch the basket when you're gluing it, because it tacks pretty fast. And if it touches, it might secure the landing where it touched at, and you're not going to be able to move it without ripping the surround back up. So you want to glue that whole bead around the edge of the landing without having the cone touch. Then what you want to do is you want to push straight down on the center of the coil until the surround landing touches the basket. And you want to clamp it all the way around. If you have a gasket for your sub, gasket works best. Or you can use a clamping ring. You can put a ring around it and clamp the ring, which is usually how I prefer to do it. But I don't have a ring for this specific one, so I'm just going to clamp the surround. Our surround is now clamped in place. You also want to make sure when clamping this surround down, if you're going to do this method, to make sure that these clamps do not pull or push on the surround in either direction. You want the clamp to go straight down onto the surround. If you pull or push, it'll set the coil off when you pull these shims out. Also, sometimes you can get away with kind of stretching one side of the surround a little bit more than the other if your assembly is a little crooked. It's not recommended, but sometimes that'll help alleviate the slight coil rock at high excursion. And now what you do is you spray that landing with activator and you let it sit for about 20 minutes. Once that's dry, you want to remove your clamps. Same fashion as the spider. Slowly pry apart, push downward. That way you don't tear up the surround. And now what you want to do is you want to remove your shims from the center. And just check it to make sure there's no coil rub. You can also do a visual inspection down inside to make sure that the coil sits pretty evenly around the T-yoke or the pole that comes up from the center, and which this one looks perfect. Next we're going to apply the cap. Okay, our cap is a poly-domed no lip cap, meaning there's no lip on the edge to secure to. So this will get a little bead of glue on the bottom and a bead of glue around the outside, DD style. First thing I do is I put a piece of tape on it. That way I can hold it, set it down into place, and just kind of test fit your cap first to make sure it's going to fit. Never know, somebody might send you the wrong cap. This one fits good. So what we're going to do is put a bead of glue on the back side. Sometimes you'll take a little sandpaper to it and rough it up on the edge to get it to adhere better. You also want to take sandpaper to all your landings before you glue it. You want to sand the landing itself a little bit, just scuff it. You also want to scuff the spider a little bit and the surround. That just helps it adhere better. The grooves, sometimes you'll notice, like on this basket, there's slight grooves on the basket itself That's to help the glue adhere better. So what we're going to do is glue this cap and get it put on. The no-lip cap, you want to make sure you get the glue spread on the very edge of the cap, because that's what's going to be holding it. There's been a lot of problems with these caps popping off because the glue isn't on the very edge of the cap. Then what you want to do is you want to flip it over. Set the cap where you want it. Slightly push down on it. And apply your activator all the way around the cap. Once that's done, you can take your tape off. Kind of check around the edges a little bit. Tap it and push a hair just to make sure that the cap adhered. And in this case it did. Here you can choose either, you can CA around the whole side of it, which sometimes can be kind of gaudy looking because CA is hard to work with and it doesn't self-level. Or you can do what DD does. DD doesn't even use CA glue on their caps. What they use is a black rubberized epoxy, and that's actually what I would prefer to put around the cap because it's self-leveling also, which means you'll get a nice smooth finish all the way around the cap. But for this, we're not going to epoxy it right now. We're actually going to stop and take TS perimeters off of this to see how it turned out. First thing I want to do is check my ohm load. Okay, with my meter set to 200 ohms, I am reading 2.9, 3.0, which is perfect, which is exactly what this coil should read. So everything's good. You want to give the speaker a little push on the top. You'll notice that your ohm load is going to jump around. That's just because of the magnetic flux on the gap transferring. But you want to make sure that it comes back to rest on that same one and that it never reads a 0 when you're pushing. If it ever reads a 0, 0, 0 or a 0, then that means there's a bad connection somewhere, which means that this is one is perfect. So we're going to pull TS perimeters right now.